Officers on the pursuit call. Suspect vehicle was last seen heading north near the power station. Containment will be set up ahead of his last known direction of travel. This call is still code 6. Handle on TAC 3.
Alright guys, so welcome back. Another video. This one will be uploaded pretty shortly after the one that I just did on the radio, and that's because the radio project was just a side project I did to keep my sanity on the car, making improvements while I was still waiting on the coils, and that kind of gives it away. So the people that have been watching the channel will know that I took this car on the first test drive and I cracked my, I guess this would be considered custom now, custom rear over fenders on the first speed bump out of the complex. And that's because two of my coilovers are blown and there's not enough camber back here in the rear. So the car squatted as soon as it came off that speed bump, and you know, wheel meets the fender and fender doesn't like that, so it's broken. The reason why I had to go ahead and do this first is because this car is getting prepared to be painted. And I don't want to paint a fender that's going to keep breaking. That doesn't make any sense. So before I fix the fender, I want to fix the suspension problem, then fix the fender, and then paint the car. And that's what I'm ultimately working towards. These coilovers are Megan Racing. I don't know what brand specifically. They came on this car when I bought the shell, the rolling shell, all the way back in 2017, I believe. Either 2017 or 2018, something like that. But all the way back then is when I bought the rolling shell, zinky front end, all that stuff, nothing in it. And it came on these coilovers. I haven't been able to drive this car up until recently, so of course there's no way for me to know that they were blown until I'm actually like able to drive it to get a feel for it. And I think that this one is blown and the parallel one on the back is blown, but it could be the inverted way. Regardless, I'm not a fan of Megan Racing coilovers. The S14 that I had before this was on stance coilovers, so it was kind of bougie, and it kind of spoiled me because that's what I started off with. So I'm replacing these. I'd rather replace them with new. You can rebuild Megan Racing coilovers. I just want something better for my application, because on top of that, when it comes to coilovers and handling and all that stuff, if you want to do things properly, you take into consideration the fact that I have an engine swap. These coilovers were when the car was a rolling shell, most likely KA, SR, something like that. And most likely the basic spring weights of what, 8K front, 6K rear, I think is the norm. And that's for a stock S chassis with a KA in it or a SR in it. I have a RB, which is obviously more weight in the front and, you know, all that stuff. So I went back and forth to get some coilovers custom made, custom spring rates for my specific application so that I can get the most out of my coilovers. 8K front, 6K rear will work, but it's going to be way too soft for me. And it's also going to be inadequate when it comes to taking into consideration the engine swap and the weight distribution that the car now has. And that's how you kind of get into suspension geometry and all this other stuff to making sure that your car actually handles the way it's supposed to, versus throwing parts at it and hoping that it fixes. At the end of the day, this will be a street track car. I want to take it on the track, and I want to actually have a car that handles very well. That's why my wheels aren't cambered to shit, even though they're wide as hell. And that's why the fronts aren't cambered to shit, even though they're wide. It's supposed to be functional to an extent. So with that rant aside, let's get to the other portion of this. BC Racing DS series coilovers with custom spring rates. I see they stamped it. Obviously, I haven't opened it yet. But yeah, going back and forth, I was between BC Racing DS series and Fortunato coilovers. A lot of people swear by Fortunato. Fortunato was a little bit out of my budget though. And from comparison standpoint, the DS series and Fortunato seem to be very similar. So I went with the BC Racing ones. I talked to both companies about my application, how much I want to use it for street, how much I want to use it for track, the RB swap, all that other stuff, so that we can all come across the best spring rate for my application and for what I'm trying to do. So If I can open this with one hand, that would be great, but I doubt it, just because of the way that things are packaged. By the way, if you didn't know, I knew this beforehand, but if you didn't know and you're looking to buy coilovers and stuff, custom spring rates from BC Racing have a 2 to 3 week build time. And they have it on their website saying 2 to 3 week build time. So don't expect it to be brand new within, shipped to your door within about 4 days. But I knew that mine was going to take a while because I'm doing the custom spring rate thing and all that stuff. But shipping was actually pretty easy. I think they shipped it on Monday and today is Thursday. So that's not bad. Let's see what we got in here. Now, on the vice versa side of it, if you're getting the standard 8K front, 6K rear for the S chassis with no extra custom options, those they have available in stock. You can get those shipped to your door pretty fast. It's just if you go custom spring rates, then you're looking at a different thing. BC Racing. Of course, we got the stickers. Let me see. I'm reading these. All right. Yep, they did get it right. So my custom build to accommodate for the RB, I have 10K front and 8K rear, which is definitely stiffer than the 8K, 6K combo, but it's still streetable. It should still be streetable. And god damn, these are beautiful. Ooh, them looking nice. Them looking nice. Hold on, get this plastic out the way. Dang. Anyways, what I was saying is that's it's stiffer than the stock 8K front, 6K rear, but it also accommodates for the heavier engine and the track/daily usage that I want to have for the car. So that combined with the fact that I have full ISR suspension except for I have full ISR Pro suspension except for the low control arms, I should be able to get this to work. So I'm gonna pop these on. We're gonna add a little bit of camber in the back just to help with that travel. The other way to reduce squat is to get, what are those things called? I know GK Tech sells them, and it's probably something that I will upgrade in the near future. It's something with the knuckles or the hubs or something like that in the rear. I can't think of the name of it. I'll put like a screenshot of it, but that's something that I'm thinking about doing as well. Solid bushings and those, just to help reduce the squat in the rear on top of all of this stuff. But these are nice. Holy shit. Wow. I ain't never bought new coilovers before, so this is definitely something, this is a first time experience for me. Camber plate, so this is definitely a front one. Oh, it says it front right. Now there are 1,000,005 videos on the internet about installing coilovers, so I'm just going to put this one on just for the mess of it, but I'm not going to be trying to go too in depth with it. What I will be doing is just popping them on there and mostly just going for a test drive. But when I get down there and start installing it, I'll probably just go over like, oh, this is how you install it, but I won't really be looking to do no super time-lapsey, in-depth tutorials of how to do it, just because it's 2 million videos of coilover installs on 240s or S chassis in general, and it's pretty easy. It's not as hard as people might think it is. All right, so just like I said earlier, too many videos, not going to go into it in detail, but if you do just want a quick refresher on how to install coilovers on the S chassis, it's pretty simple. For the front, you have one that I'm missing, 2, 3 bolts on the top, and then there are literally 2 at the bottom, and that's really it. So jack the car up, pop off the bottom, pop off the top, of course pop off the wheel, and then you should be able to get it in. The only thing to do when you're going from coilovers to coilovers is to match everything. So this one had camber plates. If you want to keep the same camber, you match what you had here, and then of course ride height, you match what you had there, and pop the rest of them back in, and you should be good to go. All right, so I did the passenger side. I got the wheel on. I didn't mess with the camber for now. I think I'm gonna just let, like, if it's not interfering with the fender, I think I'm gonna let the alignment place that I'm gonna take it to handle the camber and all that stuff in the front, because I know with the previous coilovers I did have them pushed all the way in, but there's some differences in the spring rates, and camber changes the more that the suspension compresses. So I'm gonna see how it looks when I first drop it before I think about the whole camber thing. I would like to keep it as regular as normal before adjusting stuff, but I did match the ride height so that, you know, everything should be the same. Technically speaking, since there's stiffer springs in the front, probably wouldn't need to, but just for safe measures so I can still clear everything, I matched the ride height on the old coilovers with the new ones. But yeah, I just finished torquing everything down on this side. If you wonder why there's masking tape on the threads, I saw this when I was looking at some videos of some old Japanese cars, Japanese race cars, and they put masking tape on the threads when the coilovers are new, so that whenever you have to adjust it, there's no debris, dirt, grime, or anything like that on the threads. The threads are basically still good as new, and you just take the tape off. So I'm gonna just keep that just in case I have to adjust it. Then I can just pull these off and they'll look just like that, whatever time period it is in the future. But so far, easy install. Like I said, 2 bolts, 3 bolts. And the BC Racing, they supply these hardware bolts, but the bottom ones you do have to already have. So that's it for the front ones. And if you want to know the torque specs, I torqued my top ones down to 30 foot-pounds and the bottom ones to 120. Just for the people that want to know torque specs and stuff. And that's off the factory service manual. Anyways, let's get looking at the rear suspension setup. You got 1 bolt down there, 2 bolts up there, and that's it. driving thing, because I had about 20 minutes of footage. I'm trying to narrow that down. On top of that, I have some other things going on that make a lot of things that I said in those clips irrelevant. Before I get into it, I did on the side a battery relocation, or not a battery relocation, a battery upgrade. So previously I had a regular Duralast battery, and I don't know if you can see it, but that plastic thing over there that's broken, that was my battery hold down, and it wasn't holding down anything. It was broken plastic, blah, blah, blah. Before I did the wiring harness, the body harness on this car, I had a power drain issue where I had to always disconnect the battery. Otherwise the battery would be drained within about an hour or so. So I'm testing now that I have the body harness that I made. Go check out that video. Nothing should have power unless ignition is on. And so far, so good. It's been about 24 hours. The battery still holds a charge. That's one of my major concerns on the street side of this build. I want to be able to take the car, drive it to a restaurant, go eat, come back, turn the car on without having to disconnect the battery. And I have achieved that. I'm going to keep going with this, see how long it lasts, but it still holds a charge. We're good on that. Outside of that, the test drive video that you saw, the fenders did not crack on that test drive. After that, I bondoed the over fenders, back smooth, fiberglassed them, fixed them, everything like that. And then I went for another test drive. This side is still fine. No cracks, nothing like that. The height adjustment suspension is working. That one's good. This side cracked again on the second one. So there's a crack here and there's a big crack on the inside where I patched it. And the reason why is because I have a new problem. So the coilovers are doing their thing. But when I drove the second time, I had somebody spot me that kind of knows a little bit about cars. So they drove behind me and they made me aware of a couple things that I was aware of too. Part of the battery thing was, since the tie down wasn't working, the battery was bouncing around if I hit a speed bump. So I heard a large clumping noise or a large banging noise whenever I went over a lateral bump, and I thought that it was the battery bouncing around. Now that this is tied down and there's nothing else in the trunk, it was still making that noise. So I'm hearing it come from the driver's side rear, whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, it has to be something suspension related, because I don't have anything in the trunk. The battery's tied down. There's nothing capable of making that noise up here that I know of. So that was one thing. The second thing is that the person that was spotting me let me know that my wheels wobble a little bit when I'm riding. So naturally, I pull the car back in, jack it up, and I start testing things. Another symptom that I had was that at low speeds, I noticed that the rear end would kind of like fishtail or crab walk a little bit. So I'm like, something's going on in the back. I'm thinking something's loose. Jack it up, start doing testing. I shake the wheel. The wheel is solid. The lug nuts are tight. Nothing's shaking or moving around. And I jacked it up by the differential at this time. So the wheel's solid, tight, nothing's moving, all that stuff. And I start jacking it up, getting the jack under here, and start prying on things, suspension arms, all that. Nothing's moving. So what I came to the conclusion of, with the way that my S14 is set up, after these 4 years, there are only a handful of things that have not been touched by me at all. And for the suspension specifically, it's the lower control arms on all four wheels, the rear subframe, bushings, rear sway bar and sway bar bushings, the axles, and the differential. None of those have been touched by me in the rear as far as suspension. Everything else has been touched, upgraded, or replaced. So these are still original lower control arms. The subframe is still from 1996, and the axle and all that stuff. The differential was welded by one of the previous owners. I didn't do that, and I will get rid of that in the future. But what I think is causing my problem is, you see that subframe bushing? That looks absolutely terrible. And that's still from 1996. The one on the driver's side is the worst one out of all four of them. And I think that's what's causing my issue. I think that since the subframe bushings are gone, the rear end has a mind of its own, and it's causing that banging noise from when I go over like speed bumps and stuff like that. I think the subframe is coming off and then slamming back into the car when it comes back down. So the next video is most likely going to be a subframe, dropping the subframe and doing the bushings. But since I'm dropping the subframe, I'm going to do some other stuff. So I'm going to do the lower control arms. I'm going to do the bushings. I might do the sway bar, but I might wait on the sway bar until the car is running and driving fine so I can see how it handles with the stock one before I decide to upgrade. I'm going to mess with my suspension a little bit. I'm going to untangle this brake line. And then another thing I noticed is that in the rear, let's see if I can get that, but there is a lock washer that locks in your toe, and I only have it on this one. You see that lock washer on the rear toe arm right there? Well, I don't have it on that one. So that would kind of explain why that wheel may be moving around. So there's some stuff like that. But that's pretty much the next video and what I'm going to be doing going forward on this one. So until then, I'll say like, comment, subscribe, follow the build, and until next time.